did a 3-year arts degree in 4 years, so that you make it that much of it.
Last time you and I shared a field was 2016, and I had a really, really good experience, and you had a really, really bad experience.
But maybe the pushing, I suppose, and I often over-push it, I'll be straight up as a parent.
Starting the business, buying the business, my God, I didn't know A4 from A3. But what I did know was the bank had to get a ball of money, so I had to figure this out somewhere now. I had to figure this out fairly quickly.
Was that a worry for you, for yourself and your wife, when the lads were coming up through school, like that their education would be affected?
So welcome to today's episode of Every Day is a School Day. This podcast aims to provide a platform to discuss topical issues in education, and today we're diving deep into the experiences of two men that have incredible stories. I was conscious of the last day. I think I had more plugs and ads and shout outs and everything to do, so I'm going to be a bit more concise for the first time in my life today. So first of all, you might notice from looking at the panel here, we're missing Des. So Des is busy preparing for Out of Order, which is coming up in a couple of weeks as well. He hasn't sent us the discount code yet, but I'm sure that's not in the post as well. So that's it. The disclaimer as well, because Paddy will remind us, anything we do say will not be used against us, or anything we do say is our own opinions, and that's the main part.
You better say Out of Order is a play, Pat.
Oh, it is a play. I know they said musical again. I think I said that the last time as well. So Out of Order has now become a play. They cancelled the musical. So Out of Order play, and a shout out to Des as well for that as well. Disclaimer is it's our own opinions as well. I also never mentioned Monorail Studios the last day as well. And I think bar that, we're going to go to social media as well. We're available on X, which is now Twitter, which was Twitter. We're available on Facebook and Instagram, and if you have any questions, you can send them to Everydayisaschooldaypodcast at gmail.com, or Days as well. And we also need to give a shout out to our sponsors, Stakelum's Work, Learn, Play as well. And I think we're all good so to get into it as well. So I suppose I want to introduce our guests here. We have Derek McGrath and we've Conor Stakelum. Do we go with the senior, or can we just go with Conor Stakelum?
I would just leave it off for Conor Stakelum.
Okay. Because the other man always refers to the last, so the last 3 letters there as well. So thanks very much. I suppose if you want, you can introduce yourselves. I generally go with that because I'd be afraid I'm going to leave out something or embarrass someone.
Yeah, I'm Derek McGrath, my name. I'm teaching in Salle College for the last 25 years. Teaching English there with 25 years. Went to school there from 89 to 94. Went to UCC from 90. Did a 3-year arts degree in 4 years, so that you make it that much of it. Did my HSTIP in UCD in 98, and I've been teaching in Salle since, so happily teaching there the last 20 odd years.
Brilliant, excellent. And Conor?
Conor Stakelum is my name. I'm from Salle, living in Thurles. Went to school locally in Salle, followed on then to Templemore, UCD, did a BCom, and then trained as a chartered accountant with PwC. It wasn't called PwC then, mind you, it was called Craig Gardner at that time. So I've took over the business. I bought a business from my uncle when I was 21 years of age and managed to keep it going and haven't been found out just yet. So like us all, haven't been found out yet. So that's really where we're at.
Oh, brilliant, excellent. I suppose we all have the unlikely combination of all being insulted equally by Michael O'Leary in the last 48 hours as well. Which, we might have to cut that bit. So I suppose we'll just begin, with the educational experiences. I think, Derek, you mentioned about De La Salle, we'll say, and you mentioned as well, Conor, about how you ventured into buying a business at 21, we'll say. Yeah. And I suppose in our discussions with people as well over the last number of weeks as well, a big thing has been any particular teacher, with Mr. Landers on, which had a big impact on Paddy as well. But was there any particular teacher or particular event that maybe had a significant influence on, I suppose, a decision you made for maybe in terms of teaching or maybe going down the business route?
Not in particular, but I would say that when you saw somebody with positive energy, so Irish, I just developed an incredible growth for Irish through no other reason other than the teacher, Declan Welsh. He just his positive energy was just infectious. So what become imagine trying to make Peg exciting and trying to get interested in Peg, but he managed it. He just managed it. But he's hopping around the classroom about trying to paint pictures of the Blasket Islands and paint pictures of what Ireland was at the time, and. So from that point of view, if you're going to try and, I read something recently where young people don't want to be taught, they want to be inspired. Well, he inspired me, and he inspired you to rise above the mundane that it was to get your verbs right and your adjectives right and all the rest of it. So yeah, he was, and from it, I just developed a love of Irish. So yeah, he certainly had a very, very positive influence.
Had you any inspiration in school that made you want to do business and become accountant and then a business person after? Or was that just your own?
I suppose that
initiative.
Well, partly it was my own initiative, but I would say that when you're in school at that time, back in the 80s, I mean, it was. I'm sure Derek is around the same vintage. It was. You just had to go to college. Or else you had to go to England, one or the other, because Ireland was desolate at the time. I mean, I would say that 80% of my class either emigrated or just had to go to college. So I don't think there was any one thing that triggered it. So you were kind of, this is where you have to go. And then once you went there, then you had to starting to make decisions. Then while you're doing the BCom, well, what is your stream now, and what is? So I suppose it was by stealth. But when you were on there was no going back in terms of you couldn't go back home until you had failed the exams because there was huge money shelled out to pay the fees. So there was a huge responsibility there. Jesus, and I can't go home and tell them I failed the exams. So that's really where it's just by stealth, I suppose, then at least where it went on from there.
It's really important words there, I suppose, that energy and that inspiration as well, we'll say, to inspire you from the mundane, I suppose. Yeah. Whatever, I suppose, we'll go maybe look into maybe the high performance as the conversation develops as well. But I suppose we're all talking about inspiring. We'll say that's a key, I suppose, a key part of teaching. There's often the quote about you won't remember what you're taught, but how the teacher makes you feel. We'll say.
Yeah, yeah, and so from it, then you then could understand how are you going to influence people? How are you going to get more people like to listen to you? And so when you're in business, I mean, you've got to be able to do that. When you're in the classroom, you're going to try and to do that. But that was the one metrics that was transferable right across. When you have positive energy and you have positive energy, he wasn't, he didn't profess to know every single thing about it. So there was a certain vulnerability there that was an attraction as well, and getting stuff wrong and getting stuff right. So yeah, that was a very, very influential transaction in my young educational experience.
Derek, did you always think you were going to be a teacher growing up, or?
I always wanted to be a teacher. Yeah, always wanted to be. I think the rigidity of my home, not the rigidity. I mean that with the greatest respect to my parents in that. I was born kind of very urbanised area, like really kind of working class environment, and none of my parents had any secondary school education, we'll say. So I think it was nearly there. The fact that they hadn't experienced, my parents, my mum did the intercert at the time, so my dad kind of worked from 5th to 6th class, just circumstances dictated that. Yeah. And that was often the way with our generation in terms of like, and yet over the years if we had a problem with maths or we had lots of problems with maths in our house, that dad would be able to it was almost kind of this life education kind of basis for him solving things. So I think initially the inspiration probably came from home, and then I made a big decision in terms of, I left St. Saviour's National School in 89, I say 88, and I went to De La Salle, and most of my friends were, we say, going up the road, whereas De La Salle was across the town, if you like. And initially the decision is almost, those decisions when you're 12 are based in consultation with your parents. For us it was anyway. You're kind of, I'd hate to portray a kind of dictatorial approach from the parents. It was just kind of, you're going to De La Salle, and some of it was GA linked and some of it was hurling. A lot of it was kind of education, and the other schools were equally as good, but it's just my parents had a kind of an opinion on the institution that is De La Salle. And I'd say myself and Morgan Kinsella, I remember in first year, were the only guys that came in from De La Salle, 200 first years. Most of them, we say, from the Dunmore Road or South Kilkenny, and De La Salle were still boarding at the time. And I think in fairness, I came under the kind of influence of the brothers in De La Salle. You know, it's a great relationship with brother Tim O'Shea and brother Thomas Walsh, and they almost kind of saw me as a project, and they actually employed me for the summers. I was painting there for the summers in first, second, third year, fifth year, sixth year. I had a job for 3 or 4 years in a row. I never actually did an interview for De La Salle College for a job. I know that's it's probably not the wisest thing to possibly say, but that's probably 25, 26 years ago. In that, when I was doing the H-Dip, I was applying for the H-Dip, and they set me up at a De La Salle school in Stillorgan, in Benildes in Stillorgan, and whilst I was doing the dip, I was doing okay, and you know, I kind of a job presented itself, you know, and so I'd say the pathway for me was very much, I won't say silver spoon, but it was kind of made for me through hard work, through my interactions with people that were influential on me and inspired me, but like brilliant men, brilliant people, brilliant teachers I had all the way through De La Salle and secondary. So no one, like Conor, I'd argue, no one kind of moment or epiphany moment where you kind of say, I want to be, the level of altruism associated with teaching, or the vocational element of it, you know, where you feel, it sounds corny to say it, where you feel you're making a difference. I would have seen that evident in my parents, even though none of them were teachers, but I would have seen that kind of trait in a club when you're growing up in a sporting environment. You kind of say, Jesus, they're doing something, and they're getting the kick out of the reciprocal kind of benefits that are happening to the students, etc. So the genuine reasons were obviously just, you know, being able to make a difference, I suppose, even though that sometimes when people hear that, they kind of think it's a bit over the top, but that's probably the real reasons for getting involved in teaching, that you feel you might be able to make a difference, and you also the inspiration of older teachers in our school that are still as enthusiastic. They didn't become, you know, kind of robotics, victims of the system, if you like. You know, they're finding a way all the time of teaching differently. You know, and I would have had a lot of teachers that found a way to teach differently every year, even if they might be doing To Kill a Mockingbird or Mice and Men for the 20th time every year. They found a way to kind of almost, you know, change their ways, and I got great kind of solace out of the fact that it can be very monotonous if you make it monotonous, I think, but it's so I'm probably gone on a tangent now, but you know, ultimately I suppose it's looking at the inspirational people above you and with you that can kind of guide you, you know. You
kind of mentioned your growing up in school, like in sport obviously played a massive part for both of you. Like while you're in school, was sport a massive part? Conor, do you want to go first there?
Yeah, sport was an escape. Sport was an escape from the mundane. Sport was an escape from a very, very drab, let's call it out Ireland at the time. Derek would tell you. I mean, like I can still remember. I can still remember the absolute depression that would come over me when the All-Ireland football final was over, because that was it. There was no more. The autumn was coming. There was no more matches going to be on television, and just this depression would just come in. So you had the whole summer long. You had Munster finals, you had Leinster finals, you had matches that were, you know, on the telly. I mean, the only matches that were on the telly were the All-Ireland semi-final and finals, and the minor games would be in Irish. But when that was over, it was, oh my God. So then to continue to go into school and to be able to play sport in school, it was just such a release to be able to go and to do it. So it was a very, very, very important part of my life to try and elevate yourself out of the mundane, and then obviously the competition, then to try and to win and to be better, and playing at home. And soccer was brilliant for us as well. I mean, everybody had a team. And you know, watching soccer and Match of the Day, and I remember watching Match with my father one night. I'm a big Ipswich Town supporter, and the only reason I got to be an Ipswich Town supporter was that my brother Richard, who was about 10 feet taller than me, told me one day, you have to pick a team. And I said, how am I going to do that? You come with me here now. And he close your eyes, and he made me pull my finger down whenever my finger landed. And he knew there was the worst team. They were down below at the bottom of the table. Anyway, life turned around, and they started to come way above his Arsenal team at the time. But soccer was a very, very important part. Match of the Day was a hugely important part of the night. I remember watching a match with my father, and there was a guy playing for Ipswich Town, Eric Mills. Really smart little guy, great player. But the little lessons that I was learning, I was roaring at the telly that he was after missing 4 goals. And my father said, hold on a second. He was there for the 4 chances. You're going to have to miss him before you get him. I said, Jesus, right, okay. At the time, I didn't appreciate what he was saying, but slowly but surely. So, yeah, a sport was...
And can you remember any teacher in school that inspired you to kind of be a hurler?
No, again, like what Derek would say, it was the combination of the club that you came from. I'm blessed, I'm one of 11, so 5 brothers and 5 sisters. So everywhere you turned,
Serious tradition.
everywhere you turned, you were being checked. You know, you might get away with yourself for about 30 seconds, but you'd be put back very, very quickly. So no, but there was an atmosphere of, without a doubt, there was an atmosphere of competing, and there was an atmosphere always of just competing. I remember poking the ball against the wall one day outside. Oh, jeez, this is great! I thought it was brilliant. Look at how quick I can do it. And one of the brothers shouted down from the window, I'll be down there in a minute. The next thing he poked the ball and he did that to me. He said, you're a hurt, of course, he said. So you're just off there. Okay, fair enough. So, they were the little things that I remember most about it.
Derek, you played for Watford as well. Like, people who know you as a manager, but you did play for Watford in your day.
Yeah, look, I probably had one of those glittery underage careers, and probably, I didn't play like in terms of Conor's ilk there. I probably faded out of it in terms of probably had to deal with a bit of expectation. I was 3-year minor, and actually won a minor in '92 against Mark and Brian Flannery, ironically, and Keith Slevin from Boris again. I remember Mark and those, the star of the tip team was Tommy Doon, obviously. This is going back now to, as I said, '92. I was under 16. Paul Flynn was the star of our team. And I remember thinking, and I'm fast forwarding in '92, kind of saying, God, I'll be here every year. And I remember in '94, I was there as captain of the Waterford Miners. And we were hammered by Cork, Sean Oakes, Halpines Cork team. And then I kind of was on the senior panel from '94 to '97, '98, without kind of getting a huge amount of game time. I had a tendency to put on a bit of weight. And I just, sometimes you kind of use the educational thing as a kind of a get out as well. I would have found that sometimes I'd be saying, I'm under pressure. I wasn't under a huge amount of pressure. I'd say to the mum and dad at home, I'm under a bit of pressure now with exams. Almost as a kind of an escape. So if I went back to primary, I would have been kind of this, believe it or not, like this blonde haired kind of, boy wonder almost. And I know how that sounds. I hope that doesn't sound egotistical, but you would have dealt with the pressure of being almost the kind of the best player in primary school and even into secondary school, where you had these kind of expectations around you, if you like. And I would have found that there was more of an innocence, like educationally, with the links with sport in primary school, and that it was kind of more just a kind of a friend thing. And then it became, I know it's even more serious nowadays, but even when I go back to even the mid, 89, I started in De La Salle, you start mixing with the Ballygunner players, the Passage players, the Moonkind players, and then all of a sudden you realise there's other fellas that are similar ilk, educationally and sporting wise. And the journey becomes a little bit more difficult, if you like. We got to a Harty semi-final in '93, but that was as good as it got for us. But ultimately, I suppose, we had a kind of a primary school teacher, Pat O'Sullivan, who basically, as I said, we were living in a very urbanised kind of area. And, he just, the volunteer element, you could see even as a 10-year-old, everything was at home for us was, whatever Mr. O'Sullivan says goes. Like, it was just like the old kind of tradition of, the primary school teacher is the master almost of what's been said in school. So when you had training, you were taught at home then that you can't miss, no matter what happens, you can't miss the school training, because he's, that kind of, I don't know, as a kind of an unwritten kind of rule around respect for that primary school figure was definitely very evident when I was growing up. And I'd say, looking at my own young lads growing up now through the primary school, it's still there, it's still there, evident in the schools that my boys have gone to, say, over the years. So he would have been a big inspiration, Pat O'Sullivan. But I think there was a certain innocence then to primary schools as well. Just even around when I think the societal changes now, like, I remember coming home, we used to go home for lunch, so we'd have a half an hour for lunch, and we'd go down to the house for lunch, and the rigidity of our house, I'd know exactly what we'd be having for dinner Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Even growing up in the kind of, with the Catholicism fairly evident in the house, like, Friday you went home and you had fish fingers and beans, and your fish, and but I remember even going home, and when even tell my wife these things, I'd say I was even in 5th class, and 4th class, I'd say, and I was Mrs. Fitzgerald was pregnant, and I didn't know what pregnancy was. And just when I think back at it, I remember saying, "Geez, Mrs. Fitzgerald, she's putting on a lot of weight." To one of my mates on the way down the road. And I know it's totally off topic subject now, but I often think about the innocence of primary school, and even comparison to now, like with the social media and the technology and all that kind of stuff. And one of my mates said to me, "Derek, she's pregnant. Like, that's what, there's a baby inside." I remember going home having a conversation.
Every day is a school
Every
day.
day is a school day. I remember going home and saying to Mum, Miss Fitzgerald, there's a baby inside. And then having that conversation, And my naivety was, it was kind of very, very evident then, but look, things change, I suppose. You get a bit wiser as it goes along, but maybe you get too wise.
That's a good point too. But I suppose thanks. I think we got a lot of tangents and all the rest of it. So I'm not going to follow up on that. Your last statement there. That's all right.
No.
I'm really interested, I suppose, how you both have juggled and managed quite demanding schedules. We'll say. I know Derek might have used being under pressure with the books at times to get out a bit of training, but demanding schedule with both education, business, and sport taking out so much of your time. We'll say it's been quite a journey. We'll say, have you any maybe kind of light bulb moments in terms of organisation, or how do you keep on top of everything, whether that was maybe starting the business at 21 and managing playing various different levels of sport, or
so like the balancing piece, and we were just talking about it off air before we came on, and Derek, you've alluded to there, it can be a crutch, and you can absolutely star it by using it as a negative. And you can absolutely internalize all that stuff, and you can bring it into yourself to actually stop you doing stuff. When in actual fact, these opportunities that come, my experience of them were that they were huge energy givers. They were actually massive energy givers. And when I think of, the last time you and I shared a field was 2016, and I had a really, really good experience, and you had a really, really bad experience. But that's life. But in that particular 2016, Mick Ryan asked me to get involved with Tipperary, and I was just trying to explain to Mick, I really think you can get somebody a little bit better than me, and I really don't have time for it. And in fairness, he came back a second and said, "Look, come on. Neither of us are going to be running the country here now. This is just coming in and giving a hand." So in 2016, we had Holy Communion, confirmation, a leaving cert, a junior cert. We had I was involved with Tipperary, and Conor was inside with the minor team, and there was life, and there was bangers and mash, and there was stuff that had to get done, and both was working in the business. My wife working in the business. But if you told me that 12 months previous, I'd say that is physically not possible. But when you actually analyze it, the psychological effect it actually is an energy giver, and you actually can do more when you're involved in a positive thing. And all those things that you start to enumerate, and you start to go down about, can I do this or can I do that? You're in a state of flow. They just happen. Yeah. They actually just happen. So I suppose it comes back to a bit of risk taking. Yeah. Like starting the business, buying the business. Or, my God, I didn't know A4 from A3. But what I did know was that the bank had to get a ball of money, so I have to figure this out somewhere now. I have to figure this out fairly quickly. Yeah. So you start to see a pattern, and you just have to have a go. Yeah. So if you have time to start enumerating all the things that you're doing, you're probably not in the right headspace. But
you would have been playing with Tip when you were 21, though, wouldn't you, Conor?
Yeah,
so you would have been all the Tip squads up and down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I was, and it did eventually take its toll. There's absolutely no point in telling you that anything else. It did eventually that I was taking my eye off the ball playing with Tipperary, and if you take it off for 5 minutes, it's in
business.
Equally, you're done with regard to. You're done. Yeah. Like, you're done. There's absolutely no doubt about it. If you take it off for 5 minutes, you're done. And I suppose there was a natural parting of the way, but that's not to say that I didn't get massive learnings to actually bring with you to stay on that other journey, which was the business journey. So it was never a burden. I never ever saw it as a burden. Only that, the parting of the ways come and you say, listen, forget it. You're done here, and now you go and you continue on the other road. But it was never a burden. It was never a burden.
very interesting, I suppose, about the energy giver as well, because at the moment I'm trying to get better at saying no to things, we'll say, but I think it's important about the energy there as well, because I know when we were talking about this as well, Paddy was mentioning about that. I suppose that conversation parents can have sometimes with kids when they're doing their leaving cert. And I know this year you would plan not to do any coaching because of the leaving cert. Your son
I wasn't doing the leaving cert, but I don't know. I felt like it was, I suppose. Yeah. Look, just following on that point, I suppose I think I've gotten better at realising that the busier you are, the more time you have. Almost, I would have taken too well, kind of, I suppose, documented kind of parental leaves when I was with Waterford. Like we say, I took a sabbatical, we say, in 15 and 16 or 16 and 17, because I found like I might have been in the middle of King Lear and, the phone was ringing around Waterford, and I kind of said, right, I'm not all in. But so go back to the crutch or the excuse. In retrospect now, I would find at the time I've had away from senior hurling management has kind of allowed me to kind of say, hang on now, there was room, was there an avoidance kind of on my behalf of going in on a Sunday morning after Tip rinse you, or a Monday morning after Tip rinse you inside Limerick, and you're going in, you're meeting the students and all that kind of stuff. You kind of don't want to be talking, but you kind of step away from it. So I think I've gotten better on reflection coming out of the bubble, if you like, of inter-county management, and then saying, hang on, what really matters here? I remember actually Eamon O'Shea, in 15 I was at an award ceremony, and Eamon O'Shea's son was the recipient of an award for Tip had beaten us in the 15 Munster final. Was Eamon manager in the 15 Munster final? I think he was, right? And again, these are just educational kind of snippets as opposed to just a hurling story. But Des Cahill asked Eamon O'Shea's son, he said, how do you feel if your dad if there's getting some abuse in the crowd? And he said, and he answered brilliant. It could have been Doon now, the chap that's playing McGrath, I'm not sure. It could be at that stage in 15. And he said, look, I know how much they put into it, so I don't really kind of pay attention to what. And I thought it was a really mature answer. And I was sitting down there and I was kind of saying, hang on, I'm thinking of taking parental leave now next year. And, so you do have moments of kind of, I suppose, instant reflection on your own process and how you're going about it in terms of, as I said, the busier you are, the more time. And I would have done a good bit of reading. Like I read a really good book, Discipline Equals Freedom. Now it's an Army SEAL merchant, Jocko Willink, where he kind of basically says if you have unbelievable structure in your life, you'll actually have freedom. So even tactically, if you talk about a team with a good structure, will have the freedom to do what they want. So I've learned a bit. So I think the point being, I suppose, around teaching or education, you're constantly learning. So I would have learned by default almost, not knowing what was the right path, saying to myself, God, I'm in the middle, I have 6-year English class here in front of me. Some of them looking for 580 and 590 points, and I'm taking a call here about will the field be available in Walsh Park the weekend. You know what I'm saying? I'm not all in. So I found it difficult, I suppose, to be all in on everything. And I kind of used it a small bit. On the leaving cert one, I had a young lad, a very ambitious young man last year, looking for high points in his leaving cert. And to answer the question, I suppose, I wasn't giving him tuition. I wasn't giving him any help. I gave him a small bit of help around his English. He's actually very mechanically minded. So he's the kind of fella, when it comes to English, he'd actually nearly have to learn off key things that were topical during the year, whether it was Israel, Gaza, whether it was the Crumlin Hospital. And he'd learn off key things and make up for his deficiencies in England by being a kind of a learn off by heart machine. So he was good at learning. So the point, I suppose, I was just giving him a bit of structure around those particular things. And I was there for him, not emotionally, but maybe to push him, I suppose. And I often over-push now, I'll be straight up, as a parent and not a teacher. I would have said to him, this is what you need to do, because if you have the ambition around that. So my deficiencies were manifesting themselves. My fixing of my deficiencies, I was trying to manifest themselves through my sons. I was kind of saying, listen, this is what I do. I'm never simulated. He was doing the HPAT for medicine, and I was saying, you have to simulate the experience in education. You have to practice, so that when the day comes, like in hurling, like in anything, when the day comes, you have to be ready for that particular day. So I thought there was good learnings in me for how I dealt with him, albeit at times I wasn't as nice as I could have been with him. And I hope I'm not painting the picture of some sort of demonic father. I was just...
but you are there.
I was pushy with him. I would have been pushy with him, and I wouldn't have got the balance right between... I'm not pushy parent, but I would have been kind of... And it's another question down the road here. The balance now between helping a young lad and actually saying to him, that's not good enough, supporting a young lad and challenging a young lad. I think it's the hardest thing in teaching now in education at the moment, where you actually say, come on now, cop yourself on, or be able to say that, and probably, I think that's probably a difficult thing. So the young lad, Fionn, was we were giving him everything we could in terms of help and going through the process with him. And did we take any retrospective credit for it? No, because he wouldn't be long pointing out to me when he was doing his economics project, Dad, you're not an economics teacher now, stay out of this, you know what I mean? And he's right, but I thought I was right, I suppose, at the time, and that's what parents do.
He did fine, didn't he?
He did fine, he did brilliantly, he did in fairness to me.
Do you want to mention what he got?
He got 8 H1s, 625.
In fairness, so he did fine.
He did, and he looked, he's a credit to himself, and it wasn't because of any pushy parent. I'd say he nearly, probably against me, I suppose, more than anything else, but he's a good lad, best of lads.
I suppose more from both of your answers there as well. I suppose at the moment I have a bit of a long book that's dragging a small bit in me. I was reading a bit about reflection there the last couple of days, and they say the more you reflect on an experience, the greater learnings that come from it as well. You can see, I suppose you mentioned as well about your initial inter-county stint and what you learned and reflecting back on that. And I suppose particularly what you said there about the fact that if you have time to think about all the different things you have on your list as well. I suppose a lot of learning comes from various different experiences as well. And I suppose I think Paddy's question is about the students, like the value of using sport, when you mentioned there about as an escape mechanism as well, because sometimes maybe students can feel I can just maybe study in sixth year. We'd say, would you have any thoughts, we'll say, on maybe the benefits? Or I
suppose I have a key question on it. I see it all the time. We've trained the school teams, the senior teams inside in school, and I suppose parents have a worry that they're not going to do as well as they could if they're, some parents now, not all parents, if they're playing sport. So you'd often have the case where a lad might say, I'm not going playing this year, sir, because I need to concentrate on my leaving cert. Or even with me with the under 20 footballers, you'd have lads that could be up there and would probably make the team, but their parents are saying, no, you need to concentrate on your leaving cert. And maybe when my girls are that age, I probably could say the same thing, but what would you, like your lads, Conor, sure they played for Tip and all that kind of stuff, have you any advice on that, or is it a very individual thing?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. It is a very, very individual thing. But I couldn't, with the risk of repeating myself, I really couldn't see it as being a burden. And because if you think about where you're asking them to go to, you're asking them to go to a system that is way better than themselves, that's much more important than themselves, where they're going to get fantastic coaching, they're going to get fantastic exposure to what it is to be at the best, and it just happens to be sport. So you should never ever see it as being a burden to be exposed to best practice. So we all get hung up that it's hurling or it's football or it's whatever else, but if there's a guy looking up from space and he's looking down at what's the social experiment tonight? Mm-hmm. Well, the social experiment tonight now is you're going to go from this room into this room, and you're actually going to be exposed to really good practices. So you'd say, well, yeah, Jesus, why shouldn't I be there? Whereas we get it all muddled up, and we say, oh, it's hurling, he could break his hand, and he's going to be late coming home, and he's going to do all the kind of... So again, we're going into all of the why nots, instead of try and remove yourself from, forget it's hurling. So there's a social experiment going to be like in the hall tonight. Why would you not want to be part of it?
Yeah.
Now you've got to manage that. So there's nobody saying that it's kind of like airy fairy stuff. You just go to no. So, and here's the big thing: support. So nobody does anything on their own. Nobody does anything on their own. And by the way, we're not the first people on the planet either. There's loads of we've been here for millions of years before us. Yeah. So I think small steps and everybody on page. So if a parent or a sibling that has done it previously, I think that's a brilliant one, because if the sibling has gone before you and done it, that's great, and that's the risk taking from the parent again. Was
that a worry for you, for yourself and your wife, when the lads were coming up through school, like that their education would be affected by playing with the teams?
No, I never ever saw it like that, because you're going to get as much learning from what you have been found out on the hurling field and the notions that you might have about yourself and your weaknesses and your strengths. And I think I would only ever have seen that as being a positive experience. That then filled you with proper tools to make better decisions when you got into the classroom and when you got in. So you can spend loads of time talking nonsense and doing nothing. But when you get back in, you don't just suddenly leave the hurling field. You're bringing those learnings with you to the classroom and to the study. And you actually cut out a whole lot of SH1T and you just get on with it. Because I'm going to train again tomorrow, but yeah, your man told me I could have been better on my left and I got blocked down 3 times, right? Okay, so again, the source experiment. What muscle memory did I learn? Okay, come in here. Your man give me a big X in my copybook there for not doing that. So you just continue. It's just repeat and continue and repeat and continue. But you need support to do that. Yeah. You need an understanding parent. You need a risk taker. Yeah. There's a certain amount of risk attached to it.
What a business person. That's why you're a business person.
Yeah, but there is, but it's a calculated risk, and the social experiment is one where it's best practice. So why would I want to be part of it?
Would you feel the same, Derek? Like Fiona is a very good hurler as well.
I can't be hypocritical here now. First of all, the wisdom of this man on my left is very much. It's kind of. I'm being injected here now by wisdom here, and then I'm thinking, will I go all in with my faults when it comes around to me? So yeah, look, Fionn has played all the way up, say, with De La Salle College and his club De La Salle, and he didn't play the Hardy last year. So I have to be kind of straight on this in that. So he's a talented musician as well. He did the choir. Now the choir requires less commitment. So in our school, so he had kind of all his friends were in the choir, and he didn't do the Hardy. We spent probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I won't say not talking on the back of his decision, but certainly over and back on me coming with Conor's kind of take on it that this will be good for you, the Hardy. There's a time for everything, and I'd quoted a bit from newspapers last year where a guy in Christians or CBC had gotten really good marks in his leaving cert, and he said the key was making sure that I kept up my extracurricular activities. And I had all the kind of evidence, and I said, look, Fionn, this guy is great balance, and went all the parental and teacher route of balance, but he chose not to, I suppose. And, it dissipated not the tension, but, the whole decision, I suppose.
But he was doing the choir.
But the choir required, listen, in terms of the Hardy, in senior hurling in De La Salle, no different than Thurles CBS. They're almost like mini inter-county minor teams in terms of their preparation. They're brilliant. And he would have situations in school whereby, say if he was out with that they would, every open night we have in the school, we put up the 07 and 08 Hardy Cup and All Ireland winning colleges teams to the we say the prospective parents, right? And we say every one of them have done remarkably well academically. We make it a kind of almost a selling point. We say we know what your worry is. De La Salle is known as a hurling school, if you like. So your worry is, will he get the same academic balance? Will he achieve his academic aims? And our general feeling would be that the discipline from the field, everything is applicable and is transferable to, as Conor says, to business, to life, to everything. Everything, and all those guys did remarkably well. The bones at the spine of the Ballygunner team now, from Stephen O'Keefe to Barry Coughlin to Philip Manny, they've all done really, really well, and so the hypocrisy lies in my own behaviours, I suppose, in terms of just when you have your own child in front of you and he's saying, I'm not sure I'll be able to do this. So it wasn't a case of I'm not doing it. It was more a case of I'm not sure will I be able to do this. So the balance between a crutch and saying I think you will be able to do it, and him deciding I'm going to go for the choir only, and I'm going to go all out to try and get medicine and UCD, I accept it completely. I would be in this man's camp here, in Conor's camp, in terms of what I would have liked him to do, but it's just, I suppose he's a chap,
What I like about what you're saying though is he decided.
Yeah.
He empowered him. He empowered him to make that decision, even though you're.
And he would have known I was a bit sour over it. Now, if you want me to be honest, he would have known. He would have to overcome that kind of.
Because I even still know you're sour.
Yeah. No, but
I wasn't known to leave it, sir.
My best mate Dermot Dooley runs the hurling in De La Salle. He's my best friend. I won't say they were relying on film, but he would have been on the team, and it would have been another little cog in there. And I'd see Dermot investing himself wholly in the preparation of the Harty team. Like, I mean, everything, training out in Carriganore, training away from the school, getting parents on board, feeding the team, you know, all the things that are done with a team of a particular level, that saying no different than yourselves with the teams inside in your schools. And so it would have been a kind of a, do you know, it was his decision, but it would have been a kind of a, I suppose I was pointing him in the direction of the other decision, but I wouldn't have, despite where way I'm coming across you, I wouldn't have sulked over it for longer than 2 or 3 weeks.
I don't think Conor believes you.
But he's playing in college now, isn't he?
He is, and he's back playing in college, and it took him a bit of time, and he's back playing with the club under 20, and they're in the championship against Ballygunner in a few weeks, and he's back enjoying it. And I suppose, not 2 fingers to me, but he's kind of, you know, he's saying now I have me time to kind of, and he said he's treating for it's pre-med in first year in UCD, and he's treating it. He said to me last week, and you know, you'd be talking about conversations you'd have. When I'm not there now, these are parental conversations. For, and I'm not there, I'm saying, Fiona, is there someone to keep an eye on you now, like that you're doing your work and all that? And he said, Dad, I'm treating first year medicine. He said, like first year, and then Salle. He said, I said, I think you're making a mistake here now. I said, you know, but he kind of said he's going off to all the societies, and he's doing a bit of canoeing, and he's trying everything. He's trying everything, so leave him at it.
I think an important thing though, as well as I suppose the broader question there a second ago, was the fact, you know, you mentioned in De La Salle, you know, put up I suppose the titles in terms and how that, I suppose, holistic approach within the school as well. I suppose I do too much driving, as Paddy, you know, as well, and I often have a podcast on. Darragh Donovan was saying,
don't say that out loud, you only listen to the podcast.
I said listen to the podcast, so that was a key part as well. Paddy's great at keeping me in check, but he mentioned about before the Doon county final on the Friday that all the families presented each player with a scrapbook of maybe memories, we'll say. I suppose I just felt, I suppose, when I heard that it really highlighted how maybe you embraced the fact that the underage coaches, and I suppose what it meant to the community as well.
Yeah. Look, it's something I had done. I actually did it before, not the Munster final 16, before the Munster semi-final in 16. I went around during my parental leave. I went around to all the primary schools of the players and the parents of the players, and just kind of put an old-fashioned scrapbook together with kind of things that they might have, you know, I think all our parents have collected paper cutouts over the years where you have kind of different things, and you know, back in certainly in the 80s and 90s anyway, my mum would have had a collection of stuff, so I just thought it'd be good to go back to the future sometimes. Yeah, look, it's heralded when you win and things like that, but the balance between in high performance, and as you all know, to get the emotional pitch right, that it's not overly emotional. So I was a little bit worried about the Friday night. I was going to do it earlier during the week, but we did it the Friday night. You know, fellas can be kind of quite emotional on the back of looking in their privacy of their own home at old pictures and maybe a letter from an old primary school teacher and things like that, you know, and kind of makes you proud, but it also makes you kind of well up. So in high performance now, even in teaching, the balance between emotional, anecdotal stories, personalising things that are of emotive level. Like for instance, I have a bit of, in religion now, in the religion module, I do a little bit of positive psychology, and we were listening to Jodie Gormley's podcast in class today. You know, I'd listened to it last week, and I was listening to the podcast about, you know, a ex-Tyrone footballer who was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and you know, basically had a kind of what they call a living wake there 2 weeks ago. You know, kind of where people came to the people. He knows he was given a few short months, as he calls it, in his own. And I was leaving the boys listening to it today, and I was saying, look lads, I don't want you to perceive this as being morbid or anything like that. This is just a guy who's been faced with the ultimate challenge, and you know, the way he embraces it in the podcast is extremely powerful. Like, and I said it, so the boys were getting good reaction to this. The point being, I suppose, ultimately, in terms of just the balance, I suppose, between selling something of an emotional nature and then coming back to some people that are more mechanically minded or logical. They like the data, they like the statistics, they like information. And you know, you often hear now in schools and teams, our metrics were a little bit off. Yeah. You know, and again, I'll go back to even first year in 1989. I won't say I got a dig, but one of the teachers gave me a dig like that, you know, like just kind of, hey, you know, get your work, and I remember I said, I won't tell my dad now about that, like, because he'd be kind of, I won't say he's pro teacher, but he'd be kind of saying, you must have done something, you must have done something to get that job, like, you know. Whereas obviously now it's completely flipped in terms of it's very hard to be kind of completely overly emotive now. Not that you would be, like, but to the students, you have to get the balance right because the societal changes. It's hard. You know, it's. I would have said for years that you personalising stuff can bring a lad with you. Like, not that you're telling them something for the sake of bringing them with you, but you know, you can hit a chord with somebody by personalising something, and I think that's been a kind of a point around the emotional part of it. You know, so to go back to the old scrapbook thing, you know, if you have a guy in the class that is interested in Harry Potter, or a guy that's interested in the Terminator or Minecraft or Fortnite, or they're interested in sport, or they're interested in musical theatre, if you can find a way, I suppose, to kind of link with those, you know, and then you're bringing them all with you. It's not just the hurling school then, it's, you know, you're kind of, so that's the reason for the scrapbook. We had 38 guys in the panel, and number 37's panel or scrapbook had to be as detailed as Darrow Donovan's, and that was important, that inclusivity. That's evident in modern education, I think, or probably in education for years.
Just a question on that, Derek. So, obviously you're a teacher for years, right? Did learning all about different individual characters help you become the manager that you are? Do you think, like, do you know, you'd have all different personalities in your class? Has that helped you then go into the field where you've loads of different personalities and getting the best out of different players?
I think it probably makes you a little bit not paranoid, but there's a thing called positive paranoia where you kind of try and see around corners almost. You're kind of trying to read situations, you know, even from people's body language. So I think if I'm in school and I'm known as the former hurling manager, we'd say in school, I would just make a conscious effort to make sure that I'm not
known as that.
I'm not known as that in a classroom situation. You know, I kind of, you know,
You're a teacher.
I love music. Like, I love musical theatre. I love musicals. So I'd try and hit home with something in the class that where the boys would know, God, all they do is talk. I don't want to be the teacher when they ask them about the match. You know what I mean? Ask them about the match.
Because you're wasting
20 minutes gone.
We had fellas
the bell is gone.
ask him one, go on, ask him.
No homework.
And you can see one fella the other fella in the class. Ask him about the match, man. Then one fella, what they do is they plant the guy in the class sometimes that's never asked a question. So, unlucky yesterday. How did you think? And you said, I often say to the boys, do you think I'm the teacher that's going to talk 25 minutes about the, you know, kind of get ahead of them almost? But that, you try and, it's no different business. I mean, Conor, you're going to have all different types of people coming into you every day of the week.
Of course.
You know?
Absolutely. And I suppose empathy is a wonderful thing to have as well. And to know, I've got to start with the customer first and then work backwards. So it's nothing got to do with me.
Yeah.
It's absolutely zero got to do with me. So you start with the customer and you work backwards. And to try every day to try and understand what's it like for them, because you're here to solve a problem. So if you start with yourself, you're in the way here now. You're actually not getting the question on the exam. So the question on the exam is asking you nothing about yourself. It's actually, how about this person here? So if you can see it that's where the question on the exam paper is, and that's what it's been at, well, then it becomes a little bit easier. It becomes a little bit easier that you won't always have the answer, but if you're starting with yourself, you're having a bad day, I think you probably don't return that phone call, or you don't have that conversation, because if you say, why have I to go and do that? It's actually, stop, just get over yourself, go and come back at it again, because if you're starting with yourself, it's probably never going to work out right. You know. So and that takes practice, and it takes it, but it's when you solve the problem then, and when you can see it from the other person's side, that's where the magic is. That's when you've actually done something to help somebody. You know, that's where you're talking about the magic inside in the classroom, the magic of Doon being involved in the team. When you actually see it from the other person's side, and you just see them, somebody, you know, they're saying, he actually understands me.
Yeah.
He actually gets me now. Very few people do, but your man gets me, and you're solving a problem for me here. That's great. That's where the magic happens, Derek, as you would see. Right? That's where it is. You know, that's.
I really like the way you made it. It's nothing fancy. No, it's the person first approach. We'll say, and there's connections between both. We'll say, I was listening to a different podcast, and they were talking. Doug Howlett was on, and he was saying often at Munster training when he was after coming over, the All Black and Frankie Sheehan go to him, what kind of drills did you do with New Zealand? And then he'd do a very basic drill. And then Frankie and come over to him after, when you go on to show us the real thing, but it was all just simplicity. But it was simplicity done, we'll say, quicker and faster than everyone else.
Yeah.
And the counter intuition lies in the fact that when New Zealand do that, then people would say that they didn't practice. You know, that was kind of off the cuff, but they probably have rigidly practiced it better than everyone else. You know, the basics.
Yeah, because even after the Ballygunner match, the opposition with Doon, the opposition manager said that, you know, we know the traits of a Derek McGrath team, we'll say, and you can see, I suppose, the amount of work that goes into any team. You know, it is like anything, whether it's teaching or whatever, the planning and preparation that goes into it, or the business. It is only when it looks easy that people think it is easy, but it's hours and hours building up to it as well.
And loads of mistakes now.
Yeah.
And loads of them, because that just polishes it.
Yeah. Just a question I was talking to the lads in work about this today. Mikey, I was talking to Mikey Breen about it, but how do you, in business life and in teaching, you know, when you're after a poor result, and this is a life skill for students as well, like if they do bad in an exam, how do you manage to go back into business or back into school and be able to switch off from that result and just move on from it? Like, that's a bit of an issue I have now. If we lose a match, Pat will tell you that. I find it hard to hours. My wife will tell you too. I could be like very contrary after losing a match, and it takes me a long time. And I suppose since my little girls were born, that kind of has helped. There's a bigger picture there. But how do you switch off from it?
Go ahead, Conor.
I think it's a really interesting topic, and I think nobody plans to lose.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid statistically you're going to lose. So nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to give players tools to actually prepare to lose, because it's counterintuitive, because we're all here to win. But there's a reality here. You are going to lose. And I think the expectation of winning, the messaging around that you have to win every ball, you must win every tackle, you must have the highest tackle count, you must win the game. Like that, we're actually snake oil salesmen, because we're selling something that's not actually going to happen. It's not going to happen. So we're all falsifying stuff that we know is not going to happen. So when it does happen, then we just don't know how to cope.
That's true. Yeah.
We just don't know how to cope. So I think the lesson really is that, you know, players that have very, very long, and businessmen that have very, very long careers and very long and distinguished careers, their biggest attribute is that never get too high, never get too low. But for sure, there's always tomorrow. And okay, it's very easy to talk like that, but they practice it. So they come to work the next day, you come, but the messaging around everybody in the group, that's a culture that you build. That, and if there was one, you know, in recent times, you look at all of the businessmen that go bankrupt and lose, but that's fine. We'll go again, and we'll go again. And you know, in sporting terms, in recent, all you have to do is just look at Clare.
Yeah.
Like the most underrated, I would say, All-Ireland winning team for a long, long time. If you look at the resilience and you look at getting beaten, that's fine, we'll go again. Beaten in 3 Munster finals, fine, we'll go again. Then to stay at it, to stay positive, and to win in the last puck of probably the most greatest All-Ireland hurling final ever. I mean, if you're talking about not getting too high and not getting too low, they could have thrown the ties out at the pram and be gone 2 seasons ago. So I don't know where the answer is, but I remember being on a sideline after my daughter was involved in a camogie team this year, and they got beaten in the All-Ireland camogie final, and it was the Sunday after, and I met the principal. She won't mind me saying it now, and she kind of, the woman was broken. How am I going to face these girls? What am I going to do? I said, I'll go and I'll talk to the girls if I think that'll help. Like it, but like it's okay. Like tomorrow's Monday, and we'll. She said it's okay for you to say it. But when you go in and you look at the girls and you just they're just broken. And that's not right. That's not... I've wasted more of my life not wanting to see anybody, not wanting to talk to anybody. Definitely don't want to answer the door. If somebody calls the door, I'm under the table here. No, I am not answering the door now. I'm not. So I've wasted so much of my life running away from what was a loss in a game, and I see players exactly following it, and I would just love to interrupt that process somewhere. I just love to interrupt it, and I don't know where it is. Maybe Derek, you'd have something, to throw at it, but I just see young boys and young girls and young men and young women just distraught and just don't want to face society, and they lose, and they lose 2 weeks of their lives because it's such a trauma on them. But nobody wants to talk about it.
I would link that then to school and kids doing exams and the pressure they can put on themselves, and if they get a bad result in an exam, they can get real anxiety about it.
It's something I would have struggled with now. Even I would have struggled now with a loss of significance, or even an underperformance of your class in a particular area, and your results come in. You have your own personal pride. So I think the acceptance of your own personal pride, and then getting over yourself almost in that regard. But I would have struggled now initially, 14, 15, with even coming in on the Monday mornings after bad results. I remember going home one evening, my wife had all the different permutations written out for a league match, on the table, and she was kind of, she had, if they win the next match, if they win this, are they safe, almost and you're living it then, and then you're going into school the next morning, so you might go for something to eat on a Sunday evening, and then you're going into school and you're saying, then you have a young lad, at that time, say Film was in 5th class or in St. Eckland's, and he's going to be hearing a bit of it the next day, and you're kind of saying, right, is it worth it? But then you kind of, I think I've read more about like perspective thinking, where you kind of say, right, hang on, what's really important here? You read about Wooden, the definition of success, and the self-fulfillment and inner peace that comes with giving your best to something. And then you're trying to balance that with, hey, hang on, we want the trophy. We're waiting since 1959 to get a trophy in our hands in Waterford, and you're so obsessed with the journey or the end destination that you kind of forget a little bit about the journey. So I think I've read a good bit about the malleable nature of the brain and how things become more adaptive, and I've learned it's more coping mechanisms now. And one obvious coping mechanism is there's ignorance everywhere. And I think an acceptance of the fact that there's going to be a certain amount of kind of dirt put your way, and kind of just have to kind of filter it instead of snapping. I'm fairness to my dad and my late father, he always said to never bite, no matter what is said.
The dog doesn't say that.
There's a claim. There's an
investigation about that. The dog wasn't part of that.
No, he would have said just
cut that.
keep your kind of counsel, if you like, and
easier said than done.
Very hard to do. We were in a situation in 16, the go school even, and you're thinking about the process afterwards. Should you come out and say something and admonish the referee, or should you use it in the privacy of your own dressing room? And same in school. You might be in a scenario in school where a parent might ring in and come, make a complaint, not a complaint, but maybe might say, look, Mr. McGrath was missing. He was at 2 Hardy matches last Wednesday, so he was missing for. I know he has an honours English class there, and a higher level English, and he's missing. And so the parent's perspective is important, because their Jimmy is looking for whatever in English, and you're so sometimes it prompts you to kind of maybe up your game as well. The next time you go, you'd say, right, guys, I'll come in on Saturday morning and we'll do an hour. For the guys who missed at the end of the year, you might, because you have your own, as I said, you have your own pride around your job. And teaching is a job that, by Jesus, you could take it easy, and maybe, and not get away with it, is what I'd say. Whereas, I think no better fellas than the boys in front of you to kind of, to realise that you're a fraud or not. To kind of be able to say, this fella's not all in here. And I think that's a key one for me. So understanding the malleable nature of the brain, getting a bit more understanding around the neuroscience for coping mechanisms, and a little bit of perspective thinking, what's really important here. And I know that's easy to say, the family are important and all that stuff. And then enabling your own young lads to think like that, so they're not saying things to you that they heard Jimmy saying in their class, or that, so that you're kind of you're able to filter it. And I think that was a brilliant interview this year with Tom Morrissey, I think, or one of the Limerick players, who said that their social media feed has no hurling on it. You know, they have it kind of just fixed to be able to kind of
even Conor.
You know,
I mentioned that your own Conor switches off his phone a couple of days before a big match.
Yeah, of course.
He just switches off completely.
Yeah.
Just to focus on the match. Like,
Yeah.
You know, just kind of black out.
I think as well, I suppose, the perspective, I really liked what you said as well about the fact you lost a lot of time, I suppose, in your own head, we'll say. Because Shane Martin, he does, is it Mood Watchers, is his thing as well, but he says, you know, that any kind of negative thoughts, they love to be alone, we'll say. So he said when you go into a staff room, you should always find the person that's the complete opposite of you. Like if you think that is if a negative, because I suppose it's good that we are, and that maybe goes back to the social media thing, when you open up your Facebook or your Twitter or whatever it is, you're being fed the things that you agree with. So sometimes we lose the fact that we turn on RT and there's something on that's a complete opposite, you know, to us.
And just an anecdote on that, like say Doon had won the championship there a couple of weeks ago, and again I'm not on any form of social media, but one of my friends who was teaching him, he said Fionn was my young lad, he's on social media now. I said, alright, yeah. Oh, he said there was something on local, we say with WLR, about the Doon win and my link to the Doon win, and not that there's any big link or anything. I'd say, look, the majority of stuff was positive, you know.
What was that?
You know,
what was the other stuff?
Which means, you know, there's a couple of things in there that I don't want to hear about. And I said to him, look, I don't want to hear about that. Oh, he said, no, Fionn answered for you, you know. So, you know, and look, and so I was kind of saying, I collected Fionn from the train station on Saturday then, and I said, I have to leave this going, or will I say it, you know. So I was in the car on Saturday, and I said, you on social media? Are you on, you know, not that it's my business, you know, like he's obviously on Instagram or whatever, you know, and so I ended up not saying it, but I say I prompted him enough to kind of think about. I said to him, don't ever worry about that. If anyone ever says anything about me on that, I said, you know, don't ever, because you're only giving them fuel the next one, you know, and that's only as a parent, I suppose, But I'd say that to the boys in class, you know, they'd come with I'd often give them the story, like they want the Man United boys, they want Ten Hag out, you know, a few weeks ago, you know, and I said, how many Liverpool fans? And I put up the hands. How many years was Klopp now before he won a trophy, lads? You know, how many years was he here? He was straight away, sir. No, I said, add it up there. You know, was he 3 or 4 years? What's the difference? You know, trying to give him a different perspective on things, I suppose. You know, that they think a bit differently. And again, my father was brilliant in that, even regards politics. Like my father would kind of say, hang on now, we'll see David Trimble's point of view. You know, and I was saying, hang on now, lad. You know, we grew up in a house that might. No, he said he'd be good to give you the two sides of the story, the balance. You know, I have to say, I got that from home. You know, as regards the balanced viewpoint.
I've just a question for you, Conor. You know, from a business point of view, you've how many staff, right?
Yeah.
And you've all different individuals.
Yeah.
I suppose, can you see the value of education? Like, everyone kind of will progress no matter what their education is. So you would say, as you said, Derek, your family, your dad might have left school when they're 12 and 13, but it doesn't really matter. They'll get on in life if they work hard.
Yes.
Can you see that with some of your staff? Like, you might have people who went to college, or you might have people who just left school.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, college isn't for everybody, but you can't mix up just throwing your hands up to education, because you know, as is the name of it here, every day is a school day, and you can see people that I work with that are just interested in trying to be better. So that comes in many different guises. You know, becoming a teacher, becoming a doctor, becoming a whatever. But it's the appetite to be better. That's the sustainable one. That's the one that will endure you. You know, so like the metrics exam, you know, the Leaving Cert exam is a very, 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 very raw and very, very brutal metrics. But I think the real important one is, are you happy to try and to continuously improve? Yeah, because if you have that metrics, I think you'll succeed. You will absolutely succeed. So, you know, that and thanks be to God, I'm surrounded with just people that are just want to be better, and that's a mindset, and that's something that I love meeting people in the morning time with. That we perceive we have a problem, but you could just know that you're looking at people around the table and they're saying, okay, we can have a go at it this way, or so. That's just such a wonderful mindset to be around. So education for me will always be about trying to be better, trying to be better, and I'm not really interested in the perceived metrics of so many points in the leaving cert. People that would love to have working with me, people that share that mindset. So that's
an important note, like, because not everyone will be able to get to 625 points, but you can get on in life if you just work hard and you want to do better.
Well, I think working hard is it's kind of like you're giving somebody an instruction on a hurling field, and you say, I want you to work hard. Well, like, what does it actually look like now? So you have about 2 seconds to impart the knowledge to them. So really, I suppose working hard for me, I'm not a fan of that of that phrase, because tell me, what do you want me to do?
What is working hard?
Yeah. I remember I was on a side of a field at a very, very important game. I won't name the player. And I said, will you come on? And he shouted, he said, where are we going? Right. So like, and it's so true. So like, tell me what you want me to do. What's that look like? Because I'm looking to you now to try and help me. So what does it look like? So can you be better than you were the last day? And to me, that's a very simple, clear instruction. You know?
Excellent. I think we're after going way over time there, which is great. I never got the 1 hour signal before, which is good. To be honest, I suppose like the other episodes as well, we have some question there, but I suppose the conversation evolved and we went down different lines as well. We'll say the social experiment thing is something I'm going to bring with me. I suppose we're doing a social experiment here, doing a podcast here as well. But the things, because I suppose sometimes when we start talking and when we pick up on different things as well, we trigger something else in our brain as well. Really, thanks a million for both of your time. I think it's absolutely fine. We could actually talk here for the night, actually, the way things were going. And loads of snippets for, I suppose, everyone to take forward, not just even in the education or business sphere as well. I think the life lessons as well have been fantastic as well. So I'll just give a shout out as well to Stakelums as well. I never mentioned Conor. Conor Stakelum was from Stakelums at the time. I thought they'd join up those dots themselves. I better do the disclaimer as well, because we mentioned a Ryanair boss and a claim against the dog and all these different things. I must also mention Monorail Studios here in Ballyporeen, and I think over and out.